all managerial stints come to an end at some stage, Kenny. Very
death
few.
Death and taxes.
Yeah. And very seldom does it end in a way you'd like Alex Ferguson in 2013 walk away after winning a Premier League title. But it's kind of sad that Mick has left the way he did, and he's branding the fans pathetic for their behaviour towards one of the substitutions he made during the week. And
young Barry Cotter as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Dave, who actually, I worked with Barry very briefly with the under-19s. Barry was very raw. He wasn't just breaking into the Limerick squad at the time. We brought him into the squad for a couple of games. And really great attitude, the young fella. Really wanted to learn and develop, had a huge amount to learn, obviously, you know, but I just read, obviously, he'd made his way over to Ipswich. Then to read, he actually got an opportunity the other night. I was delighted for him. I don't know the circumstances, it's just the fact he was substitution. He was substituted. I don't know where the fans were. Obviously, you want to see young players come on, whether he took a young player off. But obviously it's deeper than that, like you're suggesting, mixed relationship with the fans. I watched the game against Norwich, which is a huge game, the rivalry between Ipswich and Norwich.
I was going to mention that.
Some time ago,
and it was the celebration.
Yeah, it was perfectly obvious. Like, obviously Mick there was a bit of
kind of went like this to his own
supporters when they actually scored, like,
and subsequently conceded an equaliser, which was like, oh god.
So I remember watching that particular moment that you're talking about, and looking at it thinking, Mick would know by then. Mick,
the end is nigh.
Yeah, you've got to go now. It's it's obviously got quite toxic there, and it is a shame because I think he's done great there in terms of, and I always assess a manager in terms of how successful he's been, not in terms of the trophies he's put in the cabinet, but just in terms of what he's got out of it. Has he got the best out of players available to him? That's not the only criteria you can use.
They were shambles when he took them over,
and he had to
pretty much no money to spend in the time.
Yeah, he's had to cut Dave even players' wages. He's had to shop around. He's looked at the market, obviously League of Ireland as well, just in terms of Barry Cotter as well. And I think he's done great team spirit there. One season in particular on the periphery of the playoffs, there's been a little bit of a drop off, but that's kind of understandable for the reasons that we're saying. So yeah, it's a shame, but Mick's experienced enough to know invariably this is how it ends at football clubs, and I think he is getting out at the right time. There's nowhere else to go.
I've been heavily linked. It doesn't look like his enthusiasm has waned in any way. He's been heavily linked with the West Brom job.
Wow.
He's leading the book. He's pretty much anywhere I've looked. He's been the big
I'll be honest with you. I looked at Mick hasn't managed Leeds, is he? Leeds would be a bit, you know.
You want to be going in there though with that owner?
Yeah, no, exactly. It's true.
Likely to end out well either.
But I think a draw a club like Leeds with Mick's kind of background, that type of job. Leeds is still a type of club. Sunderland's the same. When Chris Coleman took that job on, Dave, people were saying, "What's Chris Coleman doing? Hey, what's going on upstairs? The board, he wants to sell the club. Don't touch it." But there's certain clubs, as a manager, coach, wherever it is, you're just immediately drawn to it. Just the nature of the club, how big a beast it is, the potential that's at the football club. You just can't. You're almost drawn to it. You can. Those factors suddenly just push them to the side. Well, we got a dodgy, he's a bit temperamental, a bit eccentric. You don't quite. You push that to the side because the club almost sells itself. I think Sunderland's one of those.
Leeds.
That's why Chris Coleman, and I think Leeds as well, in terms of untapped potential. Like, my God,
but aren't you better off taking over a club that's just been relegated with all the parachute payments? Financially, you're going to have more clout than maybe certainly he would have had at Ipswich than most clubs who are going to be in the Champions League.
No, you're right.
Season.
It's a fair area, but you look at that almost dispassionately, aren't you? From Mick's point of view, like I said, in terms of where he's coming from and his family background in that part of England, and a club like that, Leeds. I know he's like a Barnsley lad. Don't get me wrong. Like, you know, I know he's association.
Still a Yorkshire boy.
Barnsley as well. Yeah. But there might be a process outside Leeds if they give him the job. I don't know. I don't think so, because Mick's kind of widely respected in those circles.
His longevity is insane. Like, he's been basically in a job consistently for how long now? Like, it's
since he took the Millwall job in '92.
Yeah, he's barely had a break.
Kenny, me debut. Yeah, he's a good eye for a player, Mick. Good eye for a player.
Got it in there, Kenny.
Barry Carter's in good company there. Give him some good Irish young talent.
And then you were a stalwart of his Irish team as well.
Then he saw me. Then he saw me a couple of years later.
So there you go. Put the money on Kenny Cunningham to be the West Bromwich Albion assistant manager.
I'm not sure. Would you make it as a coach? You're just a bit too mad, are you? Or that doesn't. Not a bad thing either.
Yeah, you better expand on that, Johnny. Like, don't leave that hanging. Like, you know what I mean? That could come back to haunt me. I think, like you said, I mentioned about working with the 19th just off air with you there. It's great. I love working with players. I love the dynamic of the dressing room, how it works. I did as a player, and
you like working with young
as a
players?
coach. It doesn't. Young players, yeah, I think so. In terms of, I think they're willing to learn. They want to learn. Most of them, anyway. Like I was telling you earlier, the experience I had with our under-19 is great. great talent, and working with a league group of players, whatever level, 17s, 19s, and even at professional level is fantastic. It's a great opportunity to have, and yeah, I enjoy working in that type of environment. And you're right, you need different characters. The dynamic has to be right in the dressing room. I was always aware of that as a player, and even more so as a coach. You have to play your part. You have to open yourself up a little bit to the dressing room and make a contribution. I found that early in my career as a footballer, you either take a step back or you take a step forward and engage with the group and kind of make a contribution in terms of the atmosphere inside the dressing room, the kind of dynamic within the football club. So,
would you manage the League of Ireland?
Would I manage the League of Ireland? The whole League of Ireland?
That'd be a job. Would you manage in the League of Ireland?
I would certainly consider. It hasn't been an option for me some years previously, just in terms of I'd have to make a big commitment over here in terms of time. But I have to say, going forward, I'm a big fan of the League of Ireland. I enjoy watching the football over here. And the young talent you speak about, that's always been in abundance within the league. I was up at Derry City there last week, speaking to a few of their players, Ronan Hale in particular, who's on loan from Derry City, I worked with again in the under-19s as well. Belfast boy, yeah, some real great young talent up at Derry at this moment in time. They're very excited about some of the young players to have. Ronan in particular, who's an absolute goal machine, is a real talent as well. So, yeah, when you're around it and you're talking to these people, and even being up in Derry for a small period of time, I was up there, it was a day in aid of the Ryan McBride Foundation 1 year anniversary, and it was great to be in the city around those type of people, and even that kind of football club. I think it's a special football club, Derry, in terms of the commitment they make to young talent in the city, and just the nature of the club. I don't know what it is. I mentioned it when I was up there, Dave. I don't know if you feel the same. As a Dublin person growing up, my experiences with Derry in the mid to late 80s, them coming down to Dublin and the high they were on, the numbers they brought with them, the colours, everybody wearing the jersey, it really struck me at the time. Wow, this club is special. It kind of stands alone a little bit. You can make that argument for a couple of other clubs around the place. Cork City pretty much have their own identity. Dundalk under Stephen, the kind of how well they've been doing. So it's great. You talk about the new stadium in St. Pat's. We're so used to people maybe talking it down in terms of what we're lacking. Oh, this is a disgrace. That it's amateur night. But, we have to look at the bigger picture sometimes, flip it on its head a little bit and look at what's good about the league. And there's so much good get out there, in particular the young talent, I feel, and which has always been there. So, yeah, to answer your question, yeah, I certainly wouldn't rule out for that reason, because I'm a fan of the league and I enjoy working alongside that type of talent.
Okay, that's interesting. We'll see where Kenny pops up. And
Kenny Shields is worried now. He wants the Derry job.
no,
Kenny slams Kenny.
Certainly not at the moment. He's doing a wonderful job.
I haven't been up to the Brandywell since it was redeveloped. I was up
there. Love the Brandywell.
Yeah, I was strutting my stuff up there.
Kevin Kilbane got injured, didn't he? Again.
Oh, let's not go. Do we really want to go there? Do we really want to go there? Twinkle toes, Kilbane. Yeah. You know, somebody actually inviting. He's playing in a manner you think he's inviting tackles here. The way he's carrying himself, like, you know what I mean, in terms of a little bit of, show a bit of arrogance, like, giving off that aura to people. That kind of rubs people up the wrong way.
Couple of step overs too many.
I know that'll get back to Kevin. I know these two are tight. I'll definitely get back.
We're live on the radio and several other places as well.
He's bought a new scooter as well, which is a huge development. He's going to be going around Dublin.
What are you saying? Midlife crisis? Johnny, is that what you're saying?
Actually, yeah.
Oh, come on, say it.
What a week it's been, Ken. What a week it's been.
Wow, yeah.
Where do you start? Let's start with City Liverpool and get your thoughts on how you feel that second leg went. Obviously, City were in a major hole going into that second leg, and they needed the early goal, which they got. And then you could almost say the entire tie comes down to that disallowed goal.
No, not for me.
That goes in, surely Liverpool are rocking.
We'll never know. We argue till the cows come home, but no, not for me. I think that it wouldn't have changed the tie. Even 10 minutes before
2-0 up before half time.
Yeah,
all the momentum.
No, I think physically level still would have dropped second half. Liverpool would have upped it. Their passing wasn't good enough in the first half. Liverpool, the last 10 minutes of the first half, they just began to strung a couple of passes together, and when they did, they literally cut through Manchester City's midfield and got to the edge of their box very quickly. I just felt as if there's more to come from Liverpool. They're growing into this game, and that drop off from Manchester City's second half physically, which we've seen the previous few weeks, I always felt Liverpool were going to score, whether it be 1 or 2 goals, and Man City were never going to score whatever the 5 goals required.
Even in a week where we've seen how important momentum has been with Roma, with Juventus, you just get a run on a team.
But this is different teams, different circumstances. I don't really see the comparison. I understand the comparison that you're making, but I don't think it's relevant. It's about Liverpool, where they at this moment in time in terms of their form, physically how they're looking, and Manchester City on that little bit of a dip. Just in terms of, I wouldn't say necessarily confidence, but in terms of maybe the slight frailties which they've had all season, and ultimately have been exposed at the highest level in terms of the soft centre that they have in the centre of their fence. Otamendi in particular, unfortunately, has come back to bite them in the backside, and Liverpool will be good enough to expose it. And Liverpool at the stage of the season now look as if they're actually getting better and better. In terms of their football, in terms of their physical condition, they're looking strong, fast, dynamic.
And that's the opposite of where City seem to be, isn't it?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
It's another game where they haven't scored beyond the 50th minute. That's a long period of time now since they've been able to finish games strongly. I wonder is the entire season catching up with them.
It's very deflating, isn't it, as well, because they've been on such a kind of a whirlwind, and now it's like, well, we win the league. So what, like?
But you have to find out why. I'm talking about like frailties in the team. I'd point to Otamendi. It's always been a problem. I'm very surprised he played over the last week. I'm looking at John Stones. He's disappeared. I don't know why. So that's easy to rectify. Otamendi's not good enough, he's making mistakes, get him out, get a top class centre half, and that's easy. But the point that Dave makes in terms of, well, physically what's happened, their physical condition, that's just dropped off. That's not such a quick fix, that's not easy to resolve. Guardia's going to have to sit down with his coaches after sports science department and say, look, what's going on here? Let's crunch the numbers in terms of what's going on here with the players in terms of physical drop-off. Is it too much time? The intensity that they're playing at, the kind of rotation. Guardiola talks about the type of football he wants to play, how he needs maybe the type of squad that he needs in terms of numbers to get that type of rotation, because it's difficult to play at that level, that intensity.
And I think what you're saying as well is people don't realise that to maintain that intensity in the second half, it's like, everything changed because they didn't score and Liverpool got an equaliser. But for Man City to actually play at that level in the second half was asking a Herculean effort.
But for me, the second goal would have
given an impetus.
It does an awful lot for the mind when you're going in 2-0 up at half time.
The first goal, there was a clear foul on Van Dijk. It was an absolute blatant foul, so you can argue it either way.
On Van Dijk?
It was an absolute pushed him off the ball.
No chance. I couldn't even see the contact. Well, you're not allowed to make contact with somebody.
He pushed him. It's not even a tackle. He pushed him after the ball.
Look, I think it's irrelevant. I think a Liverpool team, Dave makes point of the second. The Liverpool team 3 months ago had to concede the second goal going to the second half. I would have said, potentially they're in trouble here, because that Liverpool team of 3-4 months ago was unable to sit deep and sustain pressure and keep out opposition teams for long periods. This Liverpool team is different. The emergence of Van Dijk in the centre of defence, the calmness he's given to that defensive unit. I'd even reference Oxlade-Chamberlain in midfield, his energy, dynamism in there. James,
his career's revived. His career's revived at Liverpool. He really
has been revived, but it's always been there.
It's a new player though, almost.
It's always I wouldn't say a new player. I think it's always been there. Those qualities that you're seeing now, Johnny, they've always been there. Wenger just hasn't been utilising them.
You were a huge fan of him before he left Arsenal.
Yeah, I was.
I raised an eyebrow or two, but you've been proved right.
I got ridiculed. But I was making the argument for Mourinho buying this lad as well in the summer at the price that he went for, because Mourinho's preferred system of 3 in midfield with Matic sitting, Pogba on the left, I felt they were one short. For me, Herrera, Fellaini weren't good enough, and Oxlade-Chamberlain alongside Pogba in the advanced area of the pitch playing as 2 number 8s with Matic behind them. For me, that would have been a strong 3, and they wouldn't have had to break the bank to get him, and that's Mourinho's preferred system.
He's a hell of a passer as well. If he actually, he's such an eye for a passer, you don't really see.
But it's more so his ability to travel with and without the ball at pace over 10-15 yards, break the lines. Liverpool can do it with kind of Henderson, can pop little passes in there. But he's the only one who can pick up the ball and travel and actually break the lines in possession of football. That dynamic speed over 10-15 yards, they haven't got too many of them. Naby Keita's going to arrive again in the summer, similar type of player, kind of high energy player, dynamic player in that central area of the pitch. So for Liverpool, it's only actually getting better and better going forward. It really is. They've got to be challenged. I know it's a huge gap at the moment between them and Manchester City, but I'm telling you, they can really they can close that gap at one summer spent.
On 2018 form, there's no gap. On 2018 form, more or less since Van Dijk came, there's no gap.
Well, they've played them 3 times. once they got over that 5-0 beating at the Etihad early in the season, and they've beaten them 3 times, and they've scored a lot of goals against them. They've managed to score, 11 goals in the 3 games.
There's a defensive aspect to them as well, Dave. They're so comfortable now.
Second half was very impressive.
Yeah. Just when they bank up now, they look comfortable. They're comfortable in their own skin.
Well, what's behind that for you? Because the easy way to look at it is that they spent 75 million on Virgil van Dijk, and he has been the panacea, the silver bullet that has been the resolution to all their defensive issues. But Karius looks a lot more confident. And then something that Stephen and Keith were discussing in the Keith Andrews show yesterday was the departure of Philippe Coutinho has brought a bit more balance to the Liverpool team. That Jurgen Klopp wants to play with this front three of Firmino, Mane and Salah. They can survive as an entity almost to themselves because they're so dynamic, and that allows him to play 3 solid bona fide central midfield players in behind them, which has afforded a lot more cover to the back four, and by extension Van Dijk and Karius, which maybe wasn't possible when he wanted to play Coutinho and those 3 attacking players at the same time. Yeah,
absolutely. I think when you play Coutinho as one of those kind of midfield 3, and Klopp plays the same pretty much as Guardiola in terms of that kind of V-shaped in midfield. It's the system generally which Mourinho likes to use but has been able to use at Manchester United this year. He's been caught in between a midfield 2 and a 3. But you're right, when Coutinho is in there, out-possessed the football, could you hang your hat on him in terms of getting around the pitch and making tackles, tracking runners? Not so much. And you're right, you look at the presence of Milner now in particular of late, him plus Henderson in that central area of the pitch,
and with Oxlade-Chamberlain. Serious legs.
In terms, exactly. Serious legs up and down the pitch, Dave. Milner as well has got an experienced player, clever in terms of how he positions himself as well. So now that back 4 unit's getting a lot more protection in front for me, which was a big factor. And also the presence of Van Dijk. And you can see it now, the likes of Lovren of the past couple of weeks. Looks a different player. The 2 fullbacks, absolutely rock solid. I still have question marks about the goalkeeper. And going into the summer, if we're going to spend money big in any one area of the pitch, and looking at their outfield players, I don't think there's one area I'm thinking they've got to go and buy a right back.
He looks better though, Karius, doesn't he?
He looks better, but I'm not convinced. And I think if they have to spend some serious money this season, for me, it'd be on a top goalkeeper, and I'd get one of them out. I'd get Mignolet out, get money in for him, keep Karius as a backup, and go and get a top quality goalkeeper. And
I was watching Atletico Sporting last night. Jan Oblak was brilliant.
You're not going to get him. Not going to get him. He's huge. But I tell you who they would get. I was having this conversation with Shay last night. Jack Butland. Stoke City has a fair chance they've got to go down into the Championship. If that's the case, there might be a release clause in that lad's contract. Even if not, there's a fair chance he's going to be moving potentially England's number 1. He's then going to be playing in the Championship.
And his reputation will certainly be enhanced if he does manage to start for England in Russia and has a big World Cup. He'll add another 20 million to the
and he's an upgrade. He's certainly an upgrade, I think, on what they've got. So I think there's an easy solution there for him. English goalkeeper, been in the league, experienced in the league, less of a risk factor in terms of bringing that type of goalkeeper in. If they can reinforce in that area of the pitch, Liverpool in great shape. It's nice to see
there's so many English players as well. You know, it's not like I hate watching teams that have no players that have anything to do with not only the club but the country, and they've really strong English players in that team. Like they're, you know, because I always think you're
sprinkling.
A sprinkle, but it's still in today's football, it's actually quite a lot, particularly in the back 4 and the defence.
Homegrown as well. I mean, Alexander-Arnold is the greatest example.
Well, 4. They have 4.
That's good.
11, which
that's good.
By the standards of most leagues, that isn't bad.
It's good, and they're pivotal players, you know. And clubs should really be. I think it should be mandatory that you have players that have come through your youth system. I think because it's and for the fans, it's big that you have players that actually can represent the city and are not just fly-by-night merchants who've come in for a lot of money.
I wonder if Gareth Southgate look at James Milner and think, I would love to have him in my squad for the World Cup, and if there's anything he might do between now and the World Cup to change that.
I think on present form, I think there's a fair argument for that. Yeah, would he actually make it in terms of how Southgate's shaping up the team in terms?
Mightn't get into the team, but a great guy to have around, which I guess is not what James Milner's interested in.
I think that's the point. Would James Milner at this stage of his career want to go and play a big part in England's squad in consideration of his career so far? I'm not exactly sure about that, but I've been really impressed with Milner of late. Just fitted in nicely into that kind of dynamic in those midfield areas. And Alexander-Arnold, you mentioned, talk about homegrown, even a single player like that, local lad coming through, is absolutely huge. The feel-good factor that you get from the team, not towards him, but from the whole team. The crowd, they can't get enough. I've seen it loads of different clubs I've been at. Bring a couple of the supporters, want to see the young kids.
Gives them a connection to the team.
It's a connection. Absolutely. He's the guy that could have been, in school with me, or it could have been next door, or I could have been him, but he came through the same history as I did, not a guy from Buenos Aires. It does mean something.
And he's an interesting one in that he was the one player that was specifically been targeted in the media and amongst anyone that was discussing the build-up to that tie. He was the weak link.
And how many times was Sané caught offside? It was unbelievable.
rise to the fact that he was being talked about.
I thought that was great man management from Klopp, because he had a difficult time the couple of games previously. Crystal Palace game was referenced obviously before the first Manchester City tie. Nathaniel Clyne was back in contention for that first game.
Played against Everton as well, didn't he?
Yeah, it would have been very easy in those kind of circumstances. A young player, inexperienced, hugely important game. I've got a decision to make. I've got an experienced international right back, could very easily bring in, take him out of foreign line, don't expose him to that. But he didn't. He gave him the jersey and he put him out there, showed a huge amount of confidence in the young player, and he got it back in bucket loads from him. He was outstanding in that first game, in particular Alexander-Arnold. And you were talking about development of the young players. In terms of the experience he's got over these last 2 games, he will have grown absolutely invaluable. So yeah, great decision from Klopp in terms of that particular decision to play him. And on the flip side, Guardiola's decision to leave Sterling out in that particular game. Different circumstances going into the cauldron. You could say maybe it's affected him before previously, Sterling going back there, but he's in great form. He's been a pivotal player for Manchester City, and how it affected, I think, really disrupted their rhythm, the fluency of their play. It had a knock-on effect. Gundogan coming in, playing double narrow, and knocked De Bruyne a bit further down the pitch, almost playing in a deeper role. You know, it really contributed to the downfall I felt in that first game, which ultimately where the tie was lost.
I want to get a quick word from you on Arsenal before we move on, but the other games you're looking at Roma 3, Barcelona 0, Real 1, Juve 3, Bayern even with Sevilla. That game could have changed on 1 or 2 pivotal moments if Sevilla had shown a little more attacking ambition. It's just been such an unbelievable week of these European games. So they're into the semi-finals. We're going to get the draw later this morning to see who Liverpool are going to be facing. Who do they most want to avoid? Is it an obvious answer, Real Madrid? No, or does it matter to Liverpool?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't matter. Their mindset at the moment at football must be, let other teams worry about us. Particularly because the type of brand of football that they play, Liverpool, they stand alone from the other teams left in that competition. It's not a possession-based football that they play. They don't want to go toe-to-toe in terms of who plays the better football. You know, we're better technically than you. That's the type of football team Real Madrid want to play. They probably would have preferred to play Manchester City, Real Madrid for those reasons. Type of Liverpool football they play, fast, direct, back to front, in behind.
It's more traditional Premier League type football in Europe that we saw around 2005 to 2010.
Yeah,
English teams dominating Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't get me wrong, they go through midfield at times, Henderson and Milner, but they don't overcomplicate it. Like, they look to get the back to front. Salah, like I said before, doesn't come short and on the inside too often. Invariably he's looking to go in behind it. They don't disappoint. They hit a number of those balls in behind. They got willing runners, Sané, Mane, Salah, obviously, and even Firmino. And I know as a defender, you don't want to be doing that. You don't want to be constantly squeezing the halfway line and having to turn and run 20 yards that way. Particularly, you got players making good runs who are quick, dynamic and powerful, and that'll disrupt any one of those teams.
You're pinning the full-backs back as well, aren't you? Which just takes further from your opponent's attacking armoury. So if you're looking at a Marcelo, for example, or a Carvajal when it comes to Real Madrid, they're not going to be as willing to find themselves very high.
Particularly Real Madrid. We're talking about weaknesses like Real Madrid down their left-hand side. That pairing of Marcelo and the captain, obviously.
Ramos.
Yeah, Ramos, that left side. It's always been the guy. Ramos, a great personality, don't get me wrong, absolute leader, no doubt about that. Marcelo, wonderful footballer, more so left winger than left back. But that's the area of the pitch he can get through. Marcelo switches off. Ramos can be rash, hasn't got the juice in his legs that he did before. So you can see it already in terms of Salah operating off down that side of the pitch. Trent Alexander-Arnold getting himself involved. That's an obvious in for Liverpool down that side.
Do you see them winning this?
Well, I had this conversation 3 months ago. Can Liverpool win? No, they can't. I had the conversation again a couple of weeks ago on Air Sport. Yeah, for the reasons that we're saying, this Liverpool team absolutely can win the competition.
I said it when they were. I said it ages ago they could win it because they've just so.
Before Van Dijk came to the football club.
I actually did because I said they've so much attacking.
I disagree with you there.
I said they've so much attacking talent they could fluke their way.
But defensively they were never solid enough. They could never soak up that amount of pressure. Like, they were too fragile, too open, too nervous in defence. You know what I mean? Conceding goals from set piece. It was never going to happen. I promise you, Johnny. Prior to the arrival of those players, the whole dynamics changed. Like, just the kind of the confidence around the football club, the form, they've just grown.
But you look at the other teams that are left now. Like, they're all like Real were really hobbling into the last 4 at this stage. You know, and the other teams, Liverpool, are like they're eminently beatable. Roma and Bayern.
But this is what I'm saying. Liverpool are up there.
Possibly be favourites, and they're not.
I think at the moment they're there. For me, they're actually neck and neck with Real Madrid, with Bayern Munich slightly behind and Roma behind them. I see them as literally as close as that. Them and Real Madrid, totally contrast contrasting styles, fascinating. That's why I think in some way I'd love to see him get Real Madrid in the semi-final, similar to Arsenal and Atletico. I'd love to see it. I think over 2 legs you find out. Yeah. You find out really who's the best over the 2-legged affair, and I'd love Arsenal, to see.
So you saw them last night. Yeah. They were in deep trouble, and CSK had a couple of opportunities to make it 3-0 in the night, which would have put them through in away goals. So you could say that they were on the rack and they were crumbling. The flip side of that is that when they needed to show some character, and this is certainly the line that Arsene Wenger has been peddling after the game, that they did exactly that and scored 2 really well worked goals. The 1-2 between Welbeck and El Neni was absolutely sublime. Yeah. So which side of the argument do you come down in that regard, or somewhere in the middle maybe?
I give them a bit of credit, a bit of character to get themselves back into the game. Welbeck in particular, you know I'm a big fan of his, and the fact is, the irony is he probably wouldn't have played if McIntye was fit last night, but he's got to find a place for this lad in terms of finding a happy balance in the team, but because he hasn't got it. With McIntye on one side, Ozil, Xhaka, Ramsey and Wiltshire in the team, it's totally unbalanced, that midfield. You got 5 midfielders who can't track a run, who can't make a tackle. You can't win a major competition playing that type of football. So at least Welbeck coming in off that left hand side, not only his pace and his power, his ability to get a goal driving in from the left hand side, similar to Rashford in terms of his movement off that left hand side, predominantly a right footed player, explosive, coming in looking to play little combinations. So he was fantastic last night, Welbeck, and as well as that, he comes back, he does a shift, he gets back and does a defensive job for the team, which you don't get with the likes of McIntye, and which you certainly don't get with Ozil. And Ozil was bordering on disgrace last night in terms of his attitude, out of possession of football. It was an absolute disgrace.
Is that an indictment of Wenger though, like that he can get away with it?
It is that he can get away, because he feels as if he can get away with it. And there was a moment last night, Arsenal were 2-0 down, they were on the rack, the crowd was up, sensing this is it, really struggling. There was a ball cleared out, a desperate clearance from Neni outside the box up into the air. It dropped about 5-10 yards outside the box onto Ozil's head. Bertozowski, the big centre-half, you probably hear him steaming down behind him, looking to make contact, win the header. Ozil literally jumped out of the way of the football. Bertozowski had a touch, took the ball and smashed it about 2 inches wide at the post. Now, I've played in dressing rooms, and a lot of players would have done. You've seen that on the pitch. That player would literally have been pinned. People queuing up to pin him through the wall when he got back into the dressing room if the manager didn't get there before you. Now, I seriously don't think that happens in the Arsenal dressing room.
I don't think it's any question. It doesn't happen.
That type of attitude. Said it would happen in the Dublin dressing room. I know that. The characters they have. It's absolutely unacceptable, Dave. You can't get away with it. And Ozil, I know the flip side, wonderful technician of the football. And if you're going to play him in the team, you've really got to build a whole team around him. You've got to play him as a 10. You've got to get 2 banks of 4 behind to try and protect him, because he is all about himself. He just is not interested when he hasn't got possession of football, and every one of his teammates are working as hard as they can to get into a good defensive shape and do a stint for the team. He is not interested. He does not want to make a contribution, and that's not the type of player going forward that, for me anyway, you want to build a team around. So to cut a long story short, for me, if I was a manager of that football club, he wouldn't be at the football club. He'd have been out with a year's left on his contract, would have taken the money and got him out, and he's caused more problems by giving this massive deal in the summer, 350,000, and he's going to find out when Ramsey goes in to renegotiate his contract. He's finding out already with Wiltshire in terms of when you raise the bar to that level and play that type of player who at times looks as if he's got the heart of a pea. 350,000 players. For me, that's a little bit of an indictment of actually where Arsenal are at this moment in time. The presence of that fella, as good as he is technically, in that football club.
That's why having a homegrown player as well, who's not on 350 grand a week and is not a prima donna, means a lot. You know what I mean? Like,
the question is Mesut Ozil going to be Arsene Wenger's problem next season or somebody else's? Is that something a new manager is going to have to deal with? Keep your thoughts coming in on Twitter, at Facebook as well. We'll get to a few of those in a moment, but have a listen to this, because on last night's Off the Ball, Nathan was in the presenter's chair. He was joined in studio, as he always is, by Richie on a Thursday night, and they're just in studio. We're in the middle of an ad break. The boys are getting ready to come back on air from ads, and then a rogue voice emerges over the airwaves.
Here, welcome back to Thursday's Off the Ball. Gareth A. Davies coming up between now and 9. We are also going to be talking to Andy Moran in just a moment. I don't know what that noise is coming in the background.
We'd like to come and see you.
Kevin's having a singing. This is fantastic.
I say we talk over
Somebody
this very
pull his mic down
and quickly.
Kevin Gilbert. Singing. Oh no, he's still there.
He's still singing.
Still there.
No, the
Find Kevin Kilbane and tell him to turn his microphone off. I'm just going to keep talking so that nobody can hear what he is saying. Not that Kevin Kilbane, the nicest man in Irish sport, would curse or would say anything negative about anybody.
I don't want to reach a second Naked Gun reference of the night, but I've ever seen that piece where Frank Drebin goes into the loo in front of Naked Gun, and I was like, everybody can hear him.
I'm a little bit worried about where he is, because outside, what you can't see, obviously, even if you're watching online, everybody outside is in complete panic right now, searching for Kilbane. Nobody knows where he is, so he could well be in the Jacks, singing away to himself. JP has just come back in.
Where was he?
Are we safe? Are we safe? He's turned off his microphone.
Thank God.
Well, thank God he's the one who had to learn that lesson and not me.
He's fulfilled a lifelong ambition to emulate Naked Gun, you know.
Oh my God.
Frank Drebin lives.
He can carry a tune, Kev, can't he? He can carry a tune.
No, there's a nice tone to his voice.
Yeah, he's
a nice bloke, though. I mean, if he were a kind of a hate-filled person, who knows what he would have been saying to himself.
He's not that nice.
Or what he might have been.
Not that nice.
What sort of activity he might have been engaged in. He could have been anywhere.
Jesus.
These mics are high quality. They will travel.
Oh, there.
But he's not that nice.
Johnny, come on.
No, overrated.
Nobody's that nice.
He described
nobody's that nice. Exactly. Nobody's that nice. There's something hidden in the closet.
He described him as a showboater.
Always be suspicious of people who are described as that.
Always be suspicious of people who like everyone, you know, and he does.
Yeah.
A few comments coming in from our listeners and viewers. Dan Brady says Hunty looks like a retired actor who now owns a load of vineyards. It's a very nice way of describing Stephen Hunty. Was in studio with Keith yesterday for the Keith Andrews Show. You can podcast that and get everything they were chatting about yesterday. Owen O'Neill says Mick could easily get West Brom back up. Parachute payments. He would have more than he ever had at Ipswich.
That parachute payments, I think, is a disgrace. It's a conversation for another day. I think it's an absolute disgrace what goes on there. The parachute payments those clubs get, I think it's all wrong.
For those who aren't aware of what the parachute payment system is, pretty much if you get relegated, you do still receive money from the Premier League.
Huge
incremental amounts or decreasing amounts in seasons 1, 2 and 3 afterwards. Huge sums in comparison to the rest of the clubs in the Championship and the financial power that they have.
Where's the fairness in that when these clubs have been earning huge amounts of sums of money already up in the Premiership? It's their responsibility to put money aside if they do make that drop down. That's what good being financially sound's all about, planning for a rainy day. Why should they receive those huge sums of money when every other club in the Championship is scraping around looking at every single penny? It's totally unfair, that system. I can't believe it actually hasn't been challenged in the courts by a couple of clubs.
Mark Samuel says Karius is only looking well versus Mignolet, a backup at best, which is kind of backing on what you were saying. Get rid of Mignolet, get some cash for him, and bring in somebody like an Oblak if they could get their hands on him. Or you mentioned
Jack
from Stoke, who may well be a Championship player himself come the end of the season. Johnny, we were talking about Kevin and somehow managing to find himself with his mic on. God knows where he was, but Kenny reckons he carries a pretty nice tune. Do you know?
Soft, isn't he? Soft.
This man can sing as well.
Oh yeah, I've heard about this. Here we go.
Let's have a listen.
Lee Toddy take a trip to World Japan. He played every instrument they got. Like a lad, sure he beat the whole lot. Well, the old church bells will ring. Hell's bells, the old church choir will sing. Hell's fire, they all turned out to say farewell.
There you go.
It's an invasion of privacy. I told you, sticking that camera coming through the court.
You wouldn't have sung that in Iran, or you would have been 24 lashes or something like that.
Sing that anywhere with pride.
How'd you like Iran, actually?
Didn't see a lot of it. Didn't see a lot.
Remember they had wasn't Ramadan on at the time or something? They were in the stadium for hours beforehand. The fans.
Yeah, that's talked up an awful lot. Yeah. They were throwing there was explosive devices getting thrown on and big craters appearing in the on the pitch and stuff like that.
You were back on the north side.
Off Dorset Street, you're not wrong, to be fair.